Welcome to What? That Old Queen, a candid and adult take on queer life quandaries at a certain age. So please listen at your own discretion. Presented by Bernie and Tommy, their views are their own and in no way reflect those of any service you may hear this program on. Now, let your ears be upstanding for the Old Queen.
I was just looking at your face in the Zoom.
I can't stop staring at myself.
Well, yeah, just ignore the Zoom.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. I feel like I've got a headache coming on, but I'm going to power through.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've been a bit like that all week. I think it's been a slightly stressful week.
It's cold as well, isn't it? And I think that gets into your bones and your head.
Yeah. But there seems to have been a lot going on.
Well, there's someone texting you as we speak.
Yeah, I'm not even going to look at that.
I just got a message on Grindr. You might want to put a hyperlink in there because people might not be familiar with the application.
Right, okay.
Offering to be my sugar daddy.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a nice offer.
Yeah, so I asked exactly how old they are. 53.
Great. It wasn't me. So what do you think? Are you going to take them up on this?
Well, I did say I was 48, so it might be difficult.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sugar older brother. I mean, it depends how daddy they are, doesn't it?
Yeah. I said, do you want to just shower me with gifts or do you want to have sex?
What was their reply?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Go for it. I would. I get offers in the other way. Like, I get young guys going, will you be my sugar daddy? I went, I can probably do the daddy bit.
And maybe a bag of sweets.
Yeah, but I've run out of sugar. I might have to go to the neighbours for borrow a cup. How's the rest of your week been?
It's quite good, really. I'm sort of in the middle of 2 projects, and they're both going kind of well. Yeah, slow but steady. And I'm interviewing everyone in the Old Market area, which is where I live. Sort of, it's an area that's has seen a lot of changes over the last sort of 10 years. Interviewing people about how they feel about that, whether they consider it gentrification. Yeah, met lots of different characters.
In fact, you may be gentrified if you take up this sugar daddy.
Yeah, I'm part of the problem.
Maybe you are. This sugar daddy, were they straight?
They didn't specify they were, but I do get a lot of messages on that certain application from straight men.
Because this is what I want to talk about before we have our illustrious guest after the break, which we'll introduce later. Because you've had a lot of experience with kind of straight guys, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's how they identify themselves, I suppose. Often they're men that are in relationships with women, and I think that they like the look of me because they might perceive me as something in between androgynous or a little bit feminine, perhaps. But then let's call them straight guys, because that's how they're calling themselves, are really interested in meeting other straight acting men.
Yeah. So the reason why I ask is because over the last year, a particular person that I know is straight, like a friend of a friend, their partner, who is not their partner anymore, every time they see me, they kind of look me up and down and go, "You're looking well." And I go, "All right, thanks." And they go, "Yeah, you're looking really well." And and there's almost a bit of an edge to it. Do you know what I mean?
Would you go there?
Probably not, but it's interesting. And I was thinking, is that somebody who maybe identifies as straight but wants to sleep with other guys?
Well, everything's a bit more open now. It's just depending on how they identify themselves, really.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of research and I found another article.
You're very good at your research, Bernie.
Well, I find one article and then I just cut and paste it. No, I do look through a few, but this one seemed quite interesting. And it's an article called Why Some Straight Men Have Sex with Other Men. And it's from the website called The Conversation. And this article in particular is by Tony Silver, who's written a book about such experiences and done lots of research. And that also, the other reason why I wanted to talk about it was because there were lots of stories during lockdown where guys were kind of locked down with other guys and things happened, yeah.
That's hot.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work with sort of, sexual health charities and organisations, and, they wouldn't refer to people as gay men. They call them men who have sex with men, because I think being gay is an identity.
Yeah.
It's part of a culture, so it's more accurate to say men who have sex with men.
And it's, as you say, it's all very fluid and gender is fluid. And do you think people will stop identifying themselves as being like gay or queer or lesbian? Because
that's definitely happened with women. I think that the term lesbian is dying, and it'd be interesting to hear what our illustrious guest Karen McLeod, who's coming on in a bit, will think of that. Because it's a lot of my lesbian friends sort of mourn the loss of that terminology. Because
I feel like women's sexuality has been seen to be a little bit more fluid and quite naturally so, whereas men's sexuality has always been a bit more rigid, and men having sex with men has always been kept like secret, well, partly because it was illegal and things like that. So in this article, it says sexual identities and sexual behaviours don't always match because sexuality is multidimensional, is what you've just kind of said, really, isn't it? Many people recognise sexual fluidity and some even identify as mostly straight. When a closeted gay or bisexual man has sex with another man, he views that sex as reflecting his secret identity. He's not open about that identity, likely because he fears discrimination. When a straight man has sex with another man, however, he views himself as straight despite his sex with men. For all the issues above, I guess. It involves two related but separate issues. Firstly, why men identify as straight if they have sex with other men, and second, why straight men would have sex with other men in the first place. So this guy interviewed 60 straight men, in inverted commas, who have sex with men. And I think it's in America. And he wanted to find out what the reasons were. So several men explained that their marriages did not have as much sex as they wanted, and while they wanted to remain married, they also wanted to have more sex. So extramarital sex with men to then helped them relieve their sexual needs without threatening their marriages. Do you think that some of the sexual relationships you've had have been a bit like that?
Potentially. I think that people might feel that they, how can I put it? They're putting it to one...
They're compartmentalising it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're putting it in another box, and it's something that they don't associate with their relationship, which is part of their identity and who they are. It's just like, going to Hotel Chocolate and having a fancy chocolate that you don't usually get.
Yeah, or I guess having like a kink or a fetish. It's part of you, but you don't necessarily tell everyone about it. And
also there might be something in the fact that maybe gay men might make themselves much more available than other people might. Do you know what I mean?
In terms of having sex.
Yeah, so on the apps, for example, people are really, you're expecting to hook up. And I think that happens within straight apps as well.
Yeah.
But I think that it's much more expected that you put out when someone just says hi.
Yes. So these men felt that as though extramarital sex with a woman would negatively affect their marriages, whereas extramarital sex with a man was not that much of an issue. Most men had not told their wives about their extramarital sex, however. So in order to answer why men would identify as straight despite having sex with other men, it is important to know that sexual identities indicate how people perceive the sexual and non-sexual aspects of their lives.
There's lots of aspects to gay men's lives, for example, that aren't about sex.
Yeah, totally.
You know, you could say something is really gay, and that's used in a negative context often, but it could also just be used in terms of like something being very camp.
Yeah, and I guess there is a whole culture. There's a gay culture, isn't there? That which was kind of built out of a subculture because of it being illegal. And it was just a place where people could actually not have to hide their sexuality.
And doing this research about Old Market, which is Bristol's gay village, or has been talked about in that way, a lot of the bars, they wouldn't describe themselves as gay bars. They would describe themselves as attitude-free bars, and everybody is welcome.
Right.
So it's really just about creating a safe space for people.
Yeah.
Rather than
it being a ghetto of
the same type of people.
Yeah.
It's about offering a place for people that don't feel like they could be safe in other places.
Yeah, and so kind of accepting everyone to be there. Yeah. So the men that this guy talked to identified as straight because they felt that this identity best reflected their romantic relationships with women, their connections to heterosexual communities, or the way they understood their masculinity. Straight identification also, of course, meant that they avoided discrimination. They felt that sex with men is irrelevant to their identities given every other part of their lives. Apparently, most of these guys lived in small towns and rural settings, so this shaped how they perceived themselves. So they weren't living in metropolitan cities where it would probably be a lot cooler to be open about your sexuality. He said that most men that he talked to were happy with their lives and identities, and they did not want to identify as gay or bisexual, not when people asked them, and not to themselves. It also came as a surprise, but internalised homophobia was not a major reason the men he spoke to identified as straight. Most supported equal legal rights for lesbian, gays and bisexuals. Other research also shows that on average, straight men who have sex with other men are not any more homophobic than other straight men.
I mean, sort of that's obvious, really, because if you're if you create the enemy out of people that you potentially might be forming those sexual relationships with, you're lessening the pool of people that you are able to have fun with.
Yeah. Additionally, while most men knew bisexuality is a valid identity, they felt that bisexual did not describe their identity because they were only romantically interested in women. So it's interesting that they're using it as a romantic identity rather than a sexual one, isn't it? Many factors beyond sexual attractions or behaviours shape sexual identification, including social context, romantic relationships, and beliefs about masculinity and femininity, amongst others. Straight men who have sex with other men are not necessarily closeted because they do genuinely see themselves as heterosexual. Sexual encounters with men simply do not affect the way they perceive their identity.
I was just suddenly thinking about gay men that have romantic relationships with women.
Yeah.
And they are firmly attached to their identity as gay, but they fall in love with a woman.
Yeah. But is that more of a friendship thing?
Well, I think it's romantic.
Do you?
And I think that the boundaries between romance and friendship are blurry.
Yeah.
So you can't really point a finger at one or the other.
Yeah.
But there's definitely romance in those kinds of relationships.
It's interesting how who we want to have sex with kind of informs our identity in a way, or how we identify, isn't it? And it's an interesting conversation to have, particularly at this present time, with kind of gender boundaries kind of being blurred. And like I said before, I wonder if we'll get to a point where we don't actually have to identify what our sexual desires are, or like we don't have to identify ourselves as that.
Well, I think because, like I was saying, the bars and clubs may be doing that less, then in turn people will follow with that.
Yeah. But it was really interesting to think about it, because I've always identified as a gay man, and that's partly because of who I want to have sex with and who I want to be romantically attached with.
We all want to know who you want to be romantically attached to.
Anyone who'll have me. But it was interesting to think about that and how that has informed kind of who I am. And if I didn't identify as that, who would I be? What kind of person would I be? I don't know. It's an interesting kind of philosophical thing to almost think about, isn't it? And then how will people identify themselves in the future? I hope we get to a stage where everybody can just be themselves, and it doesn't matter who they want to have sex with or how they want to identify. It's just them as that person, and we accept them for that.
Well, they're just spiritual animal.
Yeah. What is your spiritual animal?
Oh, dear.
Is it?
I think so.
Yeah. Mine's a butterfly.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Colourful.
I've pinned you up and put you in a frame.
Happens to me all the time. I was a long time pupating.
You've got a lovely blouse on.
Thanks. Right. On that note, shall we have a break? Because we have one of my favourite performance poets in the world. She is the pinnacle of performance poetry. Barbara Brownskirt will be joining us in the throne room.
Also known as Karen McLeod.
Her alter ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She won't be Barbara tonight.
She
might be.
She might be. Barbara. I'm hoping Barbara might appear at some point. But on that note, shall we have a little break? And then we'll have our guest arrive after
please.
the break.
I'll top up the drink.
Please do. Right, so we're back, and we have a fabulous guest, don't we, Tommy?
Absolutely fabulous.
So can you please introduce our fabulous guest?
Please be upstanding for the lovely Karen McLeod, everyone.
A.K.A. Barbara Brownskirt.
Hello from us both.
I think she's hiding in the background, but
she's in the cupboard.
She's up, as usual, quite rightly so, probably, but... But yeah, maybe she might make an appearance at some point.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Okay.
That was her, actually.
Oh, okay. I mean, she got to get back to the bus stop.
Yeah, well, she hasn't left it really. Well, she did leave it during lockdown, but she's quite busy working on her 25th volume of poetry, which is called "The Bus Stop Will Not Be Sanitized."
Right.
So she's quite busy trying to knock together something to sell for Christmas because she's skin.
Right.
I'm skin.
Did she happen to catch Who Do You Think You Are with the lovely Judi Dench?
Oh yes, yes. Oh my God, it was like a theatre play, wasn't it?
Well, I spoke to my parents about it, and they were like, "We think she's very theatrical."
Well, that's kind of her raison d'etre, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, Barbara recorded it, so but just
on
because they're so. Yes, on the VHS, and she's already the tape's been worn out in certain points of freeze framing, but she's just beautiful, isn't she? I think she's got more and more beautiful. I just don't know how much more beautiful she can get.
Sexy grandma.
Yeah, to Barbara, she's wife material.
Right, obviously, she's just an effortless actress as well, I find. Yeah, she can just turn her hand to anything, and it just seems completely natural to her. Brilliant.
It's in her body, isn't it? I mean, it's in her blood. And she was just saying about Shakespeare, how she wishes she could, and she found out, didn't she, that her ancestors had been in the same place as Shakespeare, or Shakespeare, at the same time. And so it was a sort of spooky, who do you think you are? If that's, didn't you find it was like she believed? I was listening to one of your other podcasts about sort of witchcraft and ghosts, and I think she's one that would believe in all of that as well.
Well, it just makes you think about the sort of DNA being passed through, and how there's probably fundamentally still parts of that ancestor that are hers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole nature nurture debate, isn't it? Has Barbara written a poem about nature and nurture?
No.
I'm giving you some material here.
I'm just let me write that down for her. She did write a poem about her conception, which is called "The Night the Static Caravan Shook," and it's about her reimagining her mummy and daddy having sex in this static caravan and the moment of her birth. But there's not much nurture, I think, in that poem, or nature really. It's just a lot of curtains and sperm.
So you're an accomplished writer, and we will talk about that. But as we're on the subject of Barbara, how did she come about?
I was a very theatrical child, and I used to do impersonations, and I think this is very key to being quite a gay, a young lesbian child as well, or being queer, because I think a lot of us who are performers grew up doing impersonations because we were finding our way in the world of who we thought we were, and there wasn't much really to go that represented who I thought I was. So I used to just, I felt the other day I was just thinking about how a lot of gay people don't have sort of childhoods in the same way that heterosexual children do, I think, because we kind of are performing at the same time as being. So anyway, I think performance was very natural, but also there was wonderful comedians around like Faith Brown and Janet Brown. I don't think they were related, and they were doing.
But I used to do the Janet Brown show in my bedroom. And I can't really remember. I just remember the theme tune. Janet, Janet's the top of the town.
That's it. And she had a little top hat, didn't she?
Yes, yeah.
Well, thank you, Tom. You see, if we'd have been together at school, I think we would have been pals then. But yeah, I got into the arts really through comedy even back as a child. I used to write scripts with my best friend Emma, and we tried to get on Saturday Superstar. But because I turned up, I used to impersonate Sue Ellen quite a lot. I had a big crush on Sue Ellen from Dallas. Oh. And as we went to the BBC studios, and I turned up with an empty bottle of gin from my dad's cabinet, but filled with water, and I was just, and they didn't, Saturday Superstar, didn't really like this image of a 11-year-old girl swigging gin. So I felt like I didn't really think it through. Anyway, but then I went, I was really into art, I was into drawing. I just used to shut myself away and just go into my own world. And then I went to art college and went to Cardiff, where they specialised in performance art. And that's where I, in the 90s, studied performance art and filmmaking. Yeah, that's what I loved. I didn't find performance art very accessible because I didn't understand a lot of the kind of academic stuff. But by the end of it, my degree show, I was investigating drag. And I was impersonating drag queens in the gay clubs in Cardiff because I'd seen the film Victor Victoria and decided that I wanted to try and see if I could fool a live gay audience into believing that I was a man impersonating, being a drag queen.
So being a woman impersonating a man impersonating a woman.
That's right. And I pulled it off, luckily due to my height. I'm 5'11", and I was very skinny then. I had gay men coming up to me afterwards asking for my phone number.
Wow.
And when I spoke to them, I was really a method actress. I sort of even put on a deep voice when I spoke to them after the show, just to take it a little bit further, to kind of see how much I could fool people. And that was really my first foray into looking at gender and identity, which has stayed with me, like in a sort of Cindy Sherman way, ever since. And so it's quite a long answer, but that's not where Barbara came from. The Barbara came from much later, after I'd got a bit lost after art college. There was no internet and I didn't really know what to do with myself. I went and lived back with my mum and dad, who were like really not arty, and I knew I had to. And I had a real struggle with knowing how to sort of live and be an adult and look after myself and pay my own way. So I just started travelling and, you know, I started performing with Ducky, but that was like a performance here and there. It wasn't a clear path. I just wanted to be an adventurous sort of woman, you know. So I went travelling and did dead-end jobs, and then I just came back one day and my mum was like, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "I'm trying to be an artist." And she said, "Well," and so she said, "Why don't you become cabin crew? You keep doing..." And I was like, and she said, "Tony up the road's doing it. He loves it. And he's taken his mum away to Arizona and she sat in a hot tub." So I think she sort of...
She was angling for a hot tub in Arizona.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
She was sort of thinking it would be a good life for her and for me. And I'm very close to my mum. Sometimes a bit too close, I think. But anyway, so I just thought, oh, well, I'll give it a go, because I keep doing shitty jobs to save off to go travelling around the world. I'll just do it for a bit. So I started doing this job, and I felt like it wasn't me at all. But then I decided, well, what if I can pretend, a bit like the drag queen? What if I can just pretend to do it rather than really do it? But then that kind of backfired, because there's only so long you can act at doing a certain thing for so long, especially when...
I think aren't all cabin crew pretending? Especially British Airways ones.
Too true. But there's that's what I started writing about recently, but there's a sort of surface acting that you can do to get through the job. But when you start to feel like you're losing touch with yourself, which is what happened later on in the job with me, I started having a very sort of strange time of it. But then I just decided, what am I doing with my life? I've got to do something. I've got to get back to my creativity somehow. And I just started writing. I'd always wanted to write, but I went on a retreat, and that's where I started writing. I had a first sentence of a novel that I was carrying around with me, which became In Search of the Missing Eyelash, which was my first novel. And the first line is, "I woke up in a foreign armpit." So I just had this one line that I was like, I don't know how to get any further than this. So I went on a writing retreat and met Ali Smith, you know, the fiction writer. She really liked my writing, what I was doing on the course. And it all went from there. And I ended up writing a book in 9 months.
Wow.
And then it published. And then I had 2 lives. I had on the ground back at home, successful author, and then back on the plane, stewardess. And that's when things went really awry for me, because it was all too much. It feels like a sort of wrong thing to say, because the book was a big success, and I had interviews in the Observer magazine and all things like this, but it was too much. It was too much for me. I just didn't know what to do with it all. And then getting back on the plane, people asking me for tea or coffee, you know, or like this, you know, and being like real, like everyone is on planes. And I just started to disassociate with myself.
Right.
Really.
Did you not feel like it kind of grounded you in a way, having that like job, like serving the public, basically, wasn't it? But then you've got this other kind of glamorous life of a successful author.
I think it undermined me.
Right.
And I think in the way, even though it felt like an escape to be up in the air again, and I was nobody up there. You know, I was a robot. I was a stewardess. You know, I was everything that everyone wanted me to be.
Did you have friends that you were working with that knew that you'd written this novel?
No, because every week I went to work, there was different people. I mean, there were some people that kind of knew me or knew of me because I had a bit of a reputation as a party girl. But no, it was different crew each week. I mean, each week I went to work with a copy of it in my bag and said, look what I've done. And they were like, oh, right, yeah, I might buy that.
Do you know what? That is the story of my life.
And then it was just sort of the strangest of times. But anyway, around that time, I was expected to write a best-selling second novel, and it wasn't coming. It wasn't happening. So I started getting really frustrating. And I used to run a nightclub, an arty party called Moona with my friend Jane. And this frustrated poet started coming out of me. In the beginning, it was a very different kind of character. And we were at the Camberwell Arts Festival, and we were asked to do a Moona party. That was the name of the night. I decided, I was going to pretend to be an escapee from the Maudsley, which is a mental health hospital, which is really wrong. But I almost had to do the worst thing I could possibly do, which was a really shit show as well, to actually unearth Barbara. So I pretended to be a patient that believed she was Virginia Woolf, a reincarnation of Virginia Woolf. All she did was she stood on stage and barked, woof, woof, woof. Anyway, and no one in the audience found it at all funny. And I was wearing a sort of hospital gown that my mum had she'd just been in hospital, and she saves all these things for me as costumes. And then I just started thinking there's nothing funny about someone who's not, who's mentally not well. But there is something funny about someone who thinks she's a good poet, and she's not. And so that's where she sort of sprung from, and she sort of appeared quite quickly.
I really connect to what you're saying about doing something really badly in the first instant in order to get through that. I'm working with all these young artists at the moment, and I'm trying to create a space where they can just do something like possibly it could be offensive. They just need to take those risks. This is exactly the space that they can do that in order to develop, in order to be who they should be.
I agree. You have to get through. It's almost like breaking a seal of your own ego as well. It's like you have to, to be really good at something. I think you have to be also really bad at it in the beginning, perhaps, and allow yourself to feel that vulnerability.
And then how did that character kind of develop, and her obsession with Judi Dench and things like that?
Well, because of my experience with drag, I decided that drag was a spectrum. So at one end, you've got drag queens and all that glamour, and at the other end, you've got drab. So I decided...
I love it.
But what was interesting for me, because with my first novel, I wrote about a man who dresses as a woman. I mean, it was way before times when trans words were around. But I've always had that interest in me. Like in a Cindy Sherman kind of way, the sort of construction of femininity. So you take away your hair and you take away your makeup and you just don't look like a woman anymore. That's what I wanted for Barbara. I wanted to have all her sort of female signifiers taken away. And so I thought, well, she can't have hair. And I can't, how can you not have a character who, all right, she's going to have something covering it. All right, it's going to have to be a Kagools, perhaps, that will just take away hair. It'll take away her femaleness.
And sometimes she wears even more than one Kagools.
That's correct. That has had to stop lately because of the menopause. Barbara is a way that I vent my anger at the world, and I don't really need to then be an angry person. she had, yeah. And I'm really interested in people's alter egos. In fact, my next big project I want to do, aside from writing this other book, is that I want to research alter egos as an actual performance piece and talk to people like Tom and other people who, it's like how these alter egos form and what they do for us that we can't allow in our everyday lives.
It was really interesting to, hear you say about, your growing up and that whole journey that you had. And some of it I knew and some of it I didn't. And I just wondered how much of that is fed into your new novel.
Oh, right. The new novel has actually become a memoir because I'm trying to sell it at the moment and I've had various feedback. And so the new book it's about all of it. So it's called Holding Patterns, which is the shape of an airplane, that goes round and is stalled before landing. So it's about growing up in Penge with my mum and dad, and it's about how kind of family informs. I don't know about you, but I'm about to turn 50. I feel like my childhood is more important to me now than it ever has been. And looking at it, I don't know whether it's a midlife thing, but what happened then back in those early years really, I feel, informs everything that has led up to this point. And I want to live the inquiry. The reason for writing this new book about the airline was I couldn't understand how I'd got into that situation of coming across as quite a confident young woman and being very confident at art college and suddenly losing all of that and then going into this job and getting stuck and everything kind of unraveling. Also, I think it has a lot to do with being working class. I think it has a lot to do with being gay and this idea of looking at childhood in order to not just free myself up now, but like be heard, I suppose. And I think that's the point of my writing. I've always never really understood myself or the world that I live in.
But it's interesting to think about Penge, I think, because when I visited you there, it does feel, there's something about it that feels nostalgic. And because you still live there, it must feel like you're living those kind of dual lives of the past and the present all together.
I think that's right. I think I'm probably one of the few people that live where they grew up. There's certain ghosts that have haunted me. And I think, obviously, I'm close to my mum. That's probably why I came back. And it was very cheap when I bought a flat here as well. Yeah, I walked down the streets and there were stories I needed to tell, but they were just still there on the pavement. There was the book starts with a section of my life in 1983 when something quite traumatic happened. And I'd just been to Peggy Spencer's disco dancing class, and I was walking home and I was molested in the street by a man about 3 meters away from my front door. So, and I remember this day as being a day that just changed everything. I went from being very inside of myself as a young girl, and I was just sort of reaching puberty, so I had little boobs growing and all things like that, to suddenly knowing there was this outside world watching me, and I had this sort of, I suppose I experienced what they mean by the male gaze, or this kind of doubleness of watching oneself being watched. And that's the day that I went from my interior to living in an exterior being watched place, I suppose. And so in a way that kind of made sense why later on, not immediately, because I did some really quite sort of funny things to try and cope with it, and I thought I'd kind of dealt with it in my own sort of young way, which is detailed more in the book. But I also went and drank from the alcohol cupboard and around that time, and so it's not so it's quite sort of personal. In fact, I've not really talked about it before, but I'm sort of, because I know hopefully the book will get out there at some point, I will have to talk about it. But it all sort of adds up in a funny way of why later on you start behaving in ways which are not really, you don't really know yourself to be. You know, it's.
But I think what you'll find is people relate to that experience and have versions of that story, and will be very appreciative that you've actually gone to that place and tried to analyse what happened and why it happened and who you are now because of that.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I think those scars are on the pavements in a funny way. Those sorts of moments are still there in the streets, in our minds. And every time I walk along there, I mean, I still go and see my mum most days because she's, you know, I help look after her now. I know that it's like the story is just so attached to that pavement, that bit of pavement. I've often thought about sort of putting something there, or, you know, I don't know what, you know, it's just, it doesn't need to be there for anybody else. But yeah, I think there's just ghosts in the streets of where we lived. And that's why I'm so interested in everyone sort of writing about their childhoods, because that's where everything is. That's where we are still. If we haven't dealt with those stories, if we haven't even written them out or allowed them to kind of even get air, you know, they stay inside of us and can be quite dangerous later on, can make us behave, I think, in all sorts of sort of slanted ways.
I'm just suddenly thinking about the three of us as little kids talking around this table and what that would feel like.
Oh gosh.
Do you think we'd be doing impersonations?
I think I definitely used to do impersonations.
What did you do
when I was. I used to do impressions of all of the teachers. I used to do Alan Wicker, Bruce Forsyth, a bit of Larry Grayson, Danny LaRue.
Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah, I used to try and do Margaret Thatcher, yeah. I mean, who didn't? I mean, we probably have a Thatcher off, wouldn't we?
Yes, I did. Now, let me tell you.
That's literally too good. I'd probably sound like more like Morgan Freeman if I tried to do Margaret Thatcher now. Karen, it sounds like you've got a wealth of experience that you can lend to our Queens of Agony section. So you up for giving us some advice in the Queens of Agony bit?
Oh, well, I can try.
I mean, before when
Karen has come dressed as her psychoanalysis.
Yes.
Yeah. I must say, I am dressed as a psychoanalyst. Analyst. I can't even say it. Analyst.
An analyst?
And I can double up.
Okay. Right. Well, at this point, we do a little gong because we have a gong
get another bottle of wine out of the fridge.
And while that's going on, you get another bottle of wine out the fridge. Right. So we have a few questions in the Queens of Agony section. A couple of them are quite long. So, dear old queens, and I'm including you in this, Karen, are very hot guys who are possibly gay or bi naturally flirty? I'm very naive in these terms and still getting to know about being gay myself. But a lot of times, like at stores or restaurants, public places, I see guys that catch my attention and who are extremely hot. For whatever reason, my sense also tells me they might be gay, in contrast to straight guys, but who knows? I try to check them out, but subtly. I try to do it when they're not looking, but a lot of times I find these guys kind of checking out back, or like trying to get my attention, and that flirty stare. I get this a lot with very hot guys, to be fair. I don't think I'm hot. I may be a little bit above average, but there's no way that I'm at their level. So I then wonder, are super hot guys just like this, where they just like the attention from men? Like, I wouldn't think that they would want to hook up. And I guess I come across as interested in men too. I don't know. I just want to know if this is common, or perhaps I'm missing out because I'm thinking nothing of it, but maybe I do have a chance with them. Wow, that was quite long-winded.
Yes.
So I guess the general gist is this person thinks that, do you think that really attractive people are naturally flirty with everyone?
I would think they are perhaps more confident at looking people in the eyes.
Mm.
It's really difficult to say. I know some attractive people.
Do you? Can you introduce us?
I'm trying to think what they're like. No, I mean, we're all obviously very attractive as well, but I just think I remember having a really attractive girlfriend once, and and obviously my wife is too now, but she had a confidence and an air where she just would walk into a room, and I think she was aware of her beauty, and she could look people in the eye, and I think having that air is kind of hot anyway, and they're testing who's looking at them a lot of the time, and maybe they're just feeling sexually turned on in a sort of narcissistic way.
Yeah, but don't you find that, I think the whole confidence thing is what makes people attractive? It's not necessarily looks, it's about just the way that they are. And I think I very often say that when I was a younger gay man, I used to get way less interest than I do as an older gay man, and I think I get that interest now because I'm more confident in who I am and how I live my life. I'm just very me, and I'm not trying to be something I'm not. So, and I think that's what people find attractive. So it's that confidence thing. So I don't necessarily think it's flirting. It's just someone being confident.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember when the word gaydar used to when it came out? And I used to think I never had one. I mean, I think it's very different with women, because if anyone looks at me directly in the eye, I think they're coming on to me. So,
well, so do I. But obviously they're coming on to me, right?
No, I just don't have a clue. I think things are very different for gay men. I do.
Well, that's an interesting question, because I mean, this harkens back to the kind of like the feature we did at the top of the show about straight men and having sex with other men and stuff like that, and feeling attractive and stuff. Do you think that it's very different for women than it is for men, or it's very different for lesbians than it is for gay men? Yeah,
I think just due to numbers. Right. I think there's a lot. Obviously we know there's a lot more gay men, but than there ever have been, like with lesbians and bisexual women. But I don't know. I've lost track of what the question was.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's like, are like attractive people naturally flirty? And I would say yes.
I would say that within this letter, there's a sort of presumption on what attractiveness is, which is a bit like confusing for me, because I think everyone's got their own version of what that could be.
But that's what I mean. I think it's what he finds attractive, isn't it?
Yeah. So what he's finding them attractive, and he's saying that he's trying not to check them out, but he knows that they're checking them out. Well, if you're really trying not to check them out, then how do you know that they're checking you out? Because he must be looking at them. I think he needs to be more subtle and not look. But then sometimes I think that someone is so hot that I can't look at them, and then I've just missed that opportunity. Because I just literally haven't looked at them and I've left the room.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the ending of Game for a Laugh. Do you remember that? Like, you watching us, watching you.
Yeah. Yes. But also my concern is for the writer of this letter is that maybe he's so conscious of trying to work out what's going on that he's perhaps giving off sort of strange, kind of odd sort of loitering vibes.
And I also felt like, you can tell that Bernie's a trained actor, because that really came through with the performance of the letter. Did you not think there was a sort of odd confusion and sort of
Well, it's just the way that it's written. It's kind of very awkwardly written.
Yes. As a creative writing tutor, I would ask the writer to rephrase it.
Yes.
As a first draft, I would write it again as a second draft,
Yeah.
and then we could really get to the bottom of what he's feeling.
There were a lot of likes in there. So it was quite conversational. I kind of liked it. Anyway, shall we move on? I feel like we've kind of answered that one.
I wish him luck anyway.
Yes, don't we all? So, dear old queens, I've just found out my partner is an exhibitionist. So I was using my partner's computer last week to work from home, and I was looking for a document I had downloaded, and I found a folder full of pictures and videos of him naked in parks, bathrooms and cars, amongst other places. I'm shocked, and I don't know what to do. We've been together for 10 years, and I've never saw this coming. He seems to be alone in his video every time, or picture, so I don't really think he's cheating or anything, and frankly, I found the material very hot. I always felt that we had a very open and honest relationship, and that we've always been able to talk about everything, but I don't know how to bring this up, or even if I should. I'm worried he will be embarrassed or mad that I snooped, in inverted commas, but I swear I was just looking for the folder that my work document downloaded to, and I didn't for a second feel like I needed to snoop. I'm very supportive and willing to explore this fetish with him if that's what he wants, but these videos go back 4 years, so I feel like he clearly doesn't want me to know. I've been sitting on this for a week or two now. It's literally all I can think about. How do I go about this? Because holding it in is going to destroy our relationship. I can already tell. Oh,
When you were reading that, Bernie,
Yeah.
Karen was just nodding along like it was her letter.
Oh my God.
It was like, yes, that has been going on for 4 years.
Yeah.
I can concur.
All I did was change the gender in that letter. Just so
Right.
you caught on to me.
I don't know. It was another lengthy letter, but it's quite a juicy tale, isn't it?
Who is taking the photos then?
Well, I
They're
mean,
just selfies.
maybe he's got a tripod.
Selfie
Yeah.
stick.
Yeah.
If he's been doing it for a while, he's probably got the equipment.
It's probably, but it's like a hobby. You know,
Yeah.
you invest in a hobby, don't you?
I mean, with this letter, really, we want to see, and there's no reason why they couldn't have
Attached a video.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
PDFs.
Yeah. Well, I feel I haven't all the information to make a.
I feel like we've got a lot of information here. It was quite a lengthy letter.
But we're very, very visually fed, aren't we?
Yeah, this is true. Is that for a podcast?
I feel it's rather like someone's accidentally come across someone's diary.
Oh.
And we know once you've looked in someone's diary, there's no looking back.
Yeah.
And you are then party to knowing more than you should. So it's a very difficult situation. But my advice, I think, is for him to make his own set of videos and photographs and put them inside his partner's document folder.
In the folder. Oh, yeah. And go.
Slot them in and then see what happens.
Yeah. And actually, let's go one further. Recreate some of the videos that he's already done and slot yourself in. I think actually get rid of his videos and put you in there.
Delete those photos, replace them with your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Yeah, and wait for him to bring it up over the roast dinner.
Yeah, but like Sunday lunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully with the in-laws.
Yeah. Oh God! You see, I think it's like it's one of those things which he's saying is going to drive him insane if he doesn't say something. But there's no way he can bring it up without looking like he's been searching through it.
Yeah.
So I just think he's either got to treat it in a way in which it's like,
Irreverent, sort of response.
Make it sort of, oh, well, this is something you do. This is something I do too now.
Yeah.
Weird.
or be matter of fact about it when he mentions it. So, oh, by the way, I saw those lovely videos you've got on your computer.
Yeah.
They're really hot.
But then I think, it could really spoil it for the partner that he likes doing this. This is like his own private little time.
Yeah.
And it's he hasn't shared it, so he doesn't want it to be a participatory activity.
Yeah.
My advice, if he were my friend, I would be saying to him, you have to put it out of your mind, or you have to treat it humorously.
Yes.
If you come down in a sort of serious confrontational way, the trust will go from him to you, or from you, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I kind of agree, because or he just kind of subtly hints about stuff in a conversation. But the other I guess the bigger picture of this in terms of relationships, you are allowed to have separate things in a relationship. You could, you can have like a secret thing. So like he's explained that this probably isn't. It's not like he's having an affair, but he's just doing something separate and private for him. And I feel like you should be allowed to do that in a relationship anyway.
I completely agree.
How would you drop that in subtly?
Well, I don't know.
You could be like, oh, I like seeing photos of interiors of cars. Have you seen any recently?
Yes. Or I came across a video with someone masturbating in a park. That was interesting. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Maybe the subtle hint is not the way to go.
I think it's subtle hint is passive aggressive.
Yeah. I feel like, apparently it's been 4 years, so he doesn't really want to tell his partner, does he? So you either be completely honest and go, I'm really sorry, I came across this and I can't unsee it, but you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, and it's all fine, I would say, because it is, isn't it? I mean, there's no harm in this, is there?
No.
So if you think of the bigger picture, there's no actual harm in this. I mean, does this person who's written in tell their partner everything about what they do? So
no, I think I like that idea of honesty and just sort of upfrontness and not making it a thing. But I also like the notion of protect him as the bigger person, protecting that other man's secret life, and allow, because once it's out there, he's not going to get any more enjoyment out of being naked in the park. It's a bit like he's going to have his partner's eyes in his mind while he's doing it. His freedom is suddenly gone,
I think you're right, and I think that what he needs to do probably next is just assess what his opinion is of secrets, and that sometimes they're not destructive and that they can be something that are just secrets.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's if you love someone, you allow them to be who they are. You don't try and control what they do or how they are. And that's the bigger picture there, isn't it? It's like you found a part of your partner which you didn't know about, but he didn't want you to know about it. So actually you should just let it lie.
And the beauty of how we've answered this question is we've given them about 6 different options.
We've given them all the options, I feel. And it's like multiple guess. They can pick from each one. What do you think Barbara would say to this?
I would think she would not enjoy the idea of anyone with their bits out in public.
What about Dame Judy?
Well, Judy Dench wouldn't have her bits out.
This is true.
Because she has lady bits that don't come out.
She might have her boobies out.
But yeah, and probably has on a number of occasions. Anyway, shall we move on?
To party, her and Maggie Smith, yes.
Yes, okay. And Kenneth Williams asked them all to look at his bum. Oh, which links me into the next question. Dear old queens, how do I fix my flat butt syndrome?
Oh, I know the answer to this one.
Do you? Oh, this is good. Okay, I need help. I recently bought some underwear that I feel really cute and sexy in, but there's only one unfortunate issue. After taking some pictures in the mirror, I realised and accepted that my butt, unfortunately, is kind of flat. And I've also realised I would look 10 times better in my new underwear if my butt was just a bit bigger. Do you know any exercises or links to exercise routines or anything that can help cure my horrifically debilitating flat butt syndrome? If so, I'd be greatly appreciative. Well, there we go. So, Tom.
Just squats.
Squats?
Just with a heavy weight.
Squat with a heavy weight.
Because I have a flat butt, really, but
Right.
I've managed, it's a small butt, but I have managed to put some shape into it by just doing lots of squats.
Right. What about implants? Would you go
can't-
that far?
No, I mean, I do know people that have had that, and you just have to lie on your front on a sofa for about 2 months, which is appealing.
Which is kind of what I did during lockdown. So, but I didn't need implants in my butt. I don't know. Karen, what do you think?
I think, well, I don't know. I always have admired tiny bums. So I would just be like, enjoy your tiny arse. Can you hear me? I don't know if I've
Yeah,
gone a bit
of course.
on
Yes,
stage.
sorry. We're aghast at what you're saying. Enjoy your tiny ass.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you can do like exercises and, you know, you could wear padded pants.
Yes, I've done that as well.
Right.
I just, do you know, as someone who is a big bottomed woman, I've always enjoyed the shape of a small bottom.
Right.
Because it's, you know, I'd be of the school. It's like just work with what you've got, and you know,
Yeah.
I think it's quite attractive.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, I think all bottoms are beautiful.
Yes. Well, I think we can all agree on that. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's what you feel comfortable with in yourself, and if you want to improve your looks. Oh dear, Karen's frozen. Yeah, there is stuff that you can do, isn't there? I think squats is a good.
Yeah, I think they need to assess whether they, you know, because they were really enjoying themselves in their pants in that first instant, and whether they could actually just enjoy that.
Yeah, and look sexy. I think it's what you feel sexy in, and sometimes you want to feel sexy, don't you? Or you need to feel sexy. So I also condone a cream cake diet
For a big butt.
for a big butt. Yeah, I think so.
Does the cream just go to the bum?
Yes.
It's not the first time you've said that this week.
A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the buttocks. So Karen, we lost you for a bit because of the wonders of modern technology. Do you feel that you've answered enough about flat butts?
I do.
Okay. Good. There is. I did remember that there's an episode of She's Got to Have It, where one of the characters has something injected into her butt to make it bigger, and then she has an accident while she's dancing on stage, and it kind of her butt pops. So that's the pitfalls of injections. So maybe if you want to make your butt bigger, cakes or squats, or cakes and squats are a better option.
Yeah.
Or just love who you are as you are.
Or be a writer and sit on your arse for 8 hours a day, and then you'll get a big bum.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wouldn't know, but you would. So So there's your answer. So are you ready for the final question?
I am.
Great. So, dear old queens, including Karen, what are some things that every person should learn by their 30s? I'm approaching 30 in some years and want to know what are the things that every queer person should know by then.
Do you know what I was immediately thinking about?
What?
Pension schemes.
Really? Yeah. That. Do you know what? When you're approaching 30, you think that's never going to happen to me. And
Have you got a pension?
No. Well,
Have you got
I do.
a pension, Karen?
Well,
No,
the thing is I do, but I've only had one for the last couple of years, so it's going to be worth nothing by the time I need it. But actually, I should have started in my 30s. So you're absolutely right.
I thought that as well, and because it's the sort of stuff, but it's the stuff that is impossible to imagine when you're really quite sort of in your 20s, even though you feel really grown up. I think it's really good advice to actually get like financial advice at that age.
Yeah.
But I was thinking a bit more about like if I was meeting this young person now, the advice I would give them from my age, looking back to that age of which would be to be open to other people's thoughts and feelings, and like be really good to try to be good at listening to everybody. But also, I think at that age especially, you feel like you have to have it all sussed out a lot more. And so I would really say, don't be afraid of asking for help. And to learn to be able to ask for help and to admit vulnerability is something the young need to know is okay.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I was going to mirror that in a way by saying, don't put too much pressure on yourself to knowing stuff or doing stuff by the time you're 30. Because I think I did that. And I had a really bad time running up to 30 because I put all this onus on what I wanted to do with my life, and I hadn't achieved everything that I wanted to do, and I was approaching 30. And I think partly because in the gay world, when we came out, Tommy, like if you were
together,
well, you were a bit younger than me, but also you came out younger than me, so it probably was about the same time. But like on the gay scene, if you were 30, you were kind of dead, and which was another reason for us doing this podcast, because it's a celebration of being older and queer and still enjoying life in your middle-agedness, shall we put it? And I guess there was a lot of pressure. I put a lot of pressure on I wanted my own business. I wanted to have been successful in doing and being an actor and a performer, and maybe have written something, and I hadn't done any of that, and I was so depressed running up to 30. And then when it happened, I just thought, oh, it's gone. It doesn't matter. And then I kind of spent my 30s exploring everything that I wanted to explore and that I hadn't explored before. And I don't think I could have really done it until then. And I think, and this is harking back to something you said earlier, Karen, because when you found it difficult after leaving college to kind of find a pathway into what you could do, like career-wise, that you'd studied for in terms of performance art. And back then, those avenues were very limited. It was a very difficult time. You didn't, it feels like there's way more opportunity now, partly because of the communication that we have and the internet, but there's way more communication. There's way many, or you can see the pathway now to what you want to do, whereas you couldn't back then. It's just like, how do I do this? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the internet is good for something in that respect. Is very much you can see communities and you can see opportunities, whereas you'd have to buy a newspaper, and there's just no way of knowing. And in the 90s, I'm sorry to go back to the 90s, but you know, you had the young British artists who were really successful, and like you kind of felt like, you know, that should be what you were kind of doing as well. But how does that happen? How do you even, you know, it wasn't just about having, you know, a show here or there. It was like it being a sustainable future. And they didn't even teach that at art college either. They didn't teach you anything to do with how to be an artist once you've left. It was like, yeah, you're really good, but, you know,
here you go.
Here's the world.
Yeah.
And there's no way, you know. But I think it is. There's a rush to feel like you've accomplished something, but I don't know. That's a difficult thing, isn't it? If we're talking about ambition and those aspects of things. But
I feel like you shouldn't limit yourself on time for that. There's like, no. I know life is short and it goes really quickly. That's another thing I'd say to someone who in their 30s. But also, it's just like, don't set those time parameters on it. Actually, just enjoy the journey of it. But put one foot in front of the other and see where it leads you. Because sometimes it doesn't lead you to where you thought it would, but actually it leads you to somewhere which is a better place for you.
That's it. I agree. And you will find your people.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know who your people are, really.
And it takes a while to find your tribe, doesn't it? In a way. I don't feel I found my tribe until I was 40. So that's 10 years. So there you go. But by the time you're 30, you need to know that it may take another 10 years to find your tribe and yourself.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, oh God, if you can have some fun, I think fun and creativity are very well linked together. And we you know, and I just think to try and play still. I don't know about the people in their 20s now, but I feel when I was in my 20s, I was sort of caught in a sense of arrested development. So I was sort of 10 years behind heterosexual people in coming to terms with one's own sexuality and identity. And so that's why I sort of feel so young looking, even though I'm going to be 50, is that I feel like I'm actually just about to turn 40 in sort of heterosexual years, if you get what I mean.
Actually, 50 is the new 30, so...
I feel it.
Yeah, me too. Tommy, you're itching to say something.
I keep writing the ideas down. I just got carried away. But we've talked about failure as well, but just sort of embracing the failure. And then I wrote sexual liberation and feeling liberated in one's own sexuality will come later.
Yeah.
So get prepared for that.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you've missed the boat if it's not really happening for you.
Totally.
I think if you haven't worked in an old people's home by the age of 30, you should try and get a little job.
Even just volunteer.
Yeah. I think
because that gives you a real perspective on life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sort of helps. It gets used to, you know, things that happen as you get older, death included, and illness and poo and all of that stuff.
Incontinence.
Yeah. I was just going to say as well, when I was 30, I had lots of friends that were at least 20 years older than me. And also I had friends that were much younger, and I've still maintained that. But I think that's really helpful to have, especially if you're a queer person. I think that's... I mean, I've always seen the benefit of being part of a sort of lineage or like a little family of queer people and loved that.
Like, I went to see Armistead Maupin talk, and he talks a lot about your logical family, which is not blood related. It's who you find. And they tend to be people of different ages. Yeah, I think very wise words from all of us. But I feel like people are so... And this is another reason for this podcast. People are so hung up on getting older and denying that in a way, or trying to actually fight against it. And actually there's lots of positives about being older and getting older. And I feel you're right, going to an old people's home, you actually see that whole breadth of some of the positivity of it as well as the negativity. You know, it's the whole human experience. It's the one thing that we actually can't stop. So just embrace it and enjoy it.
I just can't stop now from seeing the benefits of aging. It feels, especially having menopause, where I seem to be flourishing in the sense of not worrying so much about what other people are thinking about me. There seems to be this difference that can only be hormonal, which is the most strangest of things. Because, you know, I've had also, you know, we are hormones, most of us, aren't we? Our personalities are even hormonal, it seems, when I try to kill people.
Karen did try to kill me one night.
Oh, yes, that's right, Tom. You've been very naughty.
She tried to suffocate me with a pillow.
I think you've spoken about that on this podcast.
It was her wedding night.
Wedding night. Tom was on the pull-out sofa in my front room, and I was suddenly thinking, oh, he's only got like 2 pillows. I'll go and get him another one. But apparently, according to Tom, as I was walking towards Tom with his 3rd pillow, I said to him, I've always wondered what it would be like to suffocate someone. And then I sort of just gave it to him and then went to bed.
Welcome to Serial Killers Anonymous. Well, thank you for sharing that. And you can approach me with a pillow anytime you like, Karen. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. But I think we've come to the end, alas. And Barbara hasn't really reared her head. But, you know, perhaps next time. I look forward to seeing Barbara on stage sometime soon. And where can people find out about you and Barbara?
Well, I have a website, www.karenmcleod.co.uk, lists everything I do, including Barbara. But Barbara's on Instagram and Twitter, normal B Brownskirt, I think. I'm very excited. Next year, I've been asked to take over the Royal Vauxhall Tavern as Barbara Brownskirt, so as a sort of residency. So that's really exciting.
Well, we want to be there for that.
But yeah, just type it in the internet and something will pop up.
Something will pop up. Okay, well, thank you. And I'll also put some links in our description of the show as well, some links to your book as well. And we'll plug that a bit. Please say goodbye to our lovely audience.
Goodbye, lovely audience, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here.
Absolute pleasure.
Tommy, please say goodbye.
Goodbye, and thank you, Karen, for coming on. We've wanted to have you for so long, so it's great that it's actually happened.
Yeah, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time on that old Queen.
That's the Halloween one.
It's the Halloween one. Well, let's go out with the Halloween one anyway. I mean, it's near enough, right?
Listening to That Old Queen. Written and presented by Tom Marshman and Bernie Hodges. The show was produced by Bernie Hodges for Hodge Podcasting. To contact the Old Queen, please email hello@thatoldqueen.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.